Is the Toronto real estate market going to crash? That's a great question. And in this video, I want to tell you what's happening right now in the real estate market, what could potentially happen, what you should do about it, and what's the real problem here. Hey friends, I'm Paul Haley, Toronto realtor, investor, educator, and speaker, and I want to help you learn how to invest in real estate. So what's happening right now in the Toronto real estate market? And that's important because people don't know what's going to happen. There's lots of theories and conjecture, but nobody really knows. But I can tell you what's happening right now. Okay, so for May, sales were down 53.7% from a year ago May. That's no surprise with the current pandemic. And also new listings are down 53.1%. So what's happening is listings and sales are both coming down. So that's why we still have a fairly strong market in the city. The sales are actually up 55% from April. That's probably no surprise, as that was, a heavy pandemic month. And average price is up just a little over 3%, and the home price index is up 9.4%. So, prices are coming up a little bit. It certainly isn't the crazy market that it was in January, February. So there is a glut of rentals as the new condos have come online and the Airbnb market has been decimated down by 95%. So those condos have actually come online as long-term rentals. And certainly we're not building any more houses in the old city of Toronto, so the supply isn't coming back and bidding wars are back. So I've been involved in lots of bidding wars over the last few weeks. Buyers are starting to come back, so we're gonna see some competition. Okay, so what's happening in the economy? So immigration is down, obviously, as borders are closed. Nobody's moving here. Normally in Toronto, it's 100,000 people plus. This year, the forecast is for 65,000 people. Unemployment is up to 13.7%. Some predict it's going to be 15% shortly. And the big problem with this unemployment is it's not evenly distributed. It's a lot of the low income earners that have been unemployed, and unfortunately, those are probably the people that can afford it the least. And if you know anyone in tech is going absolutely bonkers, as well as essential services. There's still some strong employment in those sectors, particularly as companies try to move online as much as they can. And of course, we're seeing businesses failing. Particularly hit hard are restaurants, bars, and so certainly that's impacting the employment levels as well. Banks are also tightening their lending practices, so that could be appraisals, it could be the kind of paperwork. They're just, approving, or they want to approve probably, well, let's say they want to take less risk because they don't know what's going to happen. And 600,000 people plus are deferring their mortgages right now. And the problem with that is that's taking up capacity in the bank, where normally those people would be focused on getting new lenders. They're, figuring out and having to process all these people that want to defer their payments. And as we know, governments are printing money. Now, that's actually probably helping a lot of folks right now, so I don't want to say that that's a bad thing. The unintended consequences of that are really, people aren't sort of spending that money. They aren't spending as much, so spending's dropped, and, we're seeing a little bit of deflation right now as well. Okay, so what do I think could happen after all this, pandemic, whenever that is, after, let's just say after, because we don't really know when after is going to be right now. So what do I think could happen? And remember, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know, but here's what I think. You're going to have to decide for yourself. Okay, so I think immigration is going to come back. People are predicting it will come back. I think it's going to come back, and it may even be stronger, as people may want to relocate to Canada, and the GTA will be a big benefactor of that, as a lot of people move to Toronto when they first immigrate to this country. Now, you may see some movement because of job structure changes to smaller towns, as people don't have to work in offices anymore. I think that will impact maybe the small towns more so than it would, any mass exodus from the city. I don't think we're going to see massive drains of population from the city, but there probably will be some smaller towns around the core that will be impacted. Businesses will eventually come back. There's probably going to be an uncomfortable period, especially for restaurants, bars, those kind of things, until we really have a vaccine. But businesses will eventually come back. They will go through bankruptcies, but they will come back. It will be different, I think, and it's going to accelerate the move to tech, which may or may not be a bad thing. But it's going to be a different business landscape in the future. Employment will come back as businesses come back. Employment will come back as people start spending. I think the shift, like I said, to tech, there'll be more tech, and Toronto is a very tech-heavy city, so employment will come back. Now, people are going to start spending. They will eventually start spending, and governments are really going to encourage people to spend. They'll do that by trying to put out good news, unlike what the CMHC said recently. And they're gonna, incentivize, let's put it that way, banks to have more open lending practices. So I think that the age of getting what I used to call free money from the banks is gonna come back. They're gonna be eager to lend. Now, they're not gonna lend to everybody, but if you have some equity in property, they're gonna want to lend you money. And honestly, if you weren't there, back in 2008, it was an interesting time. You go to your bank and they would say, "Hey, do you want to borrow more money? Do you want to buy an investment property?" You're like, okay, sure, let's do it. So the real inflation rate is gonna go up, which means the value of savings is gonna come down, the value of real wages is gonna come down, the value of debt is going to come down, and the value of real assets like real estate will go up. So condos, certainly new condos will be coming online, so the supply of condos is going to increase, and as Airbnb landlords move to sell those properties if they haven't rented them in the long-term market, so that will add some supply in terms of the condo side. And in terms of houses, we're not making any more houses, so supply is limited. We're not adding any more. The price of those properties could take off. I mean, honestly, if there was some stability in housing prices, that would be great for the Toronto real estate market. My fear is that it won't happen that way. And, you see some people predicting negative conditions for the real estate market. What you have to understand is if prices drop, sellers are going to not sell. That's basically what's going to happen. Yeah, there's some people that will have to sell. There will be a market, and it may sort of flatline or come down, but it's not going to be a mass panic like in a stock market where people just frenzy and sell. If your neighbor sold for $2 million, you're not going to sell your house for 20% less. If you don't have to, you're just going to wait, right? And the CMHC forecasted that 20% of the deferrals could actually default at some point. So that might mean some people do have to sell. Okay, so really, the important thing is, what should you do about it? That's probably the better question. Formulate what you think could happen. Look at, really, really bad to really, really good. Where you think the markets are going to land. But most importantly, what are you going to do about it? That's what you should be thinking about. So I think, if you're buying a house and you can afford it, just go ahead and buy a house. I mean, any market is nearly impossible. And certainly there are risks, pluses and minuses with trying to time a real estate market. I wouldn't do it. I think it's actually a great time to buy. So if you can afford a home, just go ahead and buy it. I'm not a mortgage agent, so I can't tell you, long term, I think interest rates will probably remain low and may even go down a bit. So personally, if it were me, I would probably do a variable loan for a short period of time, looking to fix at some point. So what about investors? So really the question you should ask yourself is, where are you going to invest? Now remember, we're probably going to see some real inflation going up, which means you probably don't want to have it in cash because the value of cash is going to go down. Bonds are, returns are probably negative right now if you include inflation. Stock market, maybe, but stock markets are very volatile, and I kind of feel like it's a bit of a house of cards. You're not really getting the returns for the real risk that you're taking. Private equity, certainly if you're going to buy, into essential services, those kind of businesses are probably a good investment. Gold, potentially you may want to have some gold. Hey, I'm not an investment advisor, but I think if there's a currency crisis, having gold short term, certainly some gold short term certainly will help. Commodities, you're going to want to invest in commodities, cocoa, wheat, sugar, those kind of things. The problem with commodities is it's a very specific knowledge base that probably most investors don't have, and it can be a bit complicated. So that leaves real estate, and I think real estate is probably one of the best investments going forward, because debt is probably going to depreciate, and the value of real assets, real wealth like real estate, is going to appreciate, right? So what do I recommend? Listen, if you're buying real estate, you always want to make sure the numbers work anyway. You want to make sure the rents are going to be covering all your costs and having some cash flow. So if you're buying those properties, then I would just go and buy those properties, specifically land, and especially land with development potential. I wouldn't buy property anticipating, huge market appreciation. You certainly want to be able to weather any storm that could happen, because markets could go down. But if you have cash flows and you have the right properties, then you can certainly weather any of those kind of storms. If you're thinking about buying condos, I would look at potentially off-market condos. Pre-construction may be interesting, as a lot of these things will get delayed, and potentially there might be good incentives for buying pre-construction in the future. So what is the real problem with this? That's a great question. The real problem with all of this is the rich are going to get richer. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in real estate, so you're probably in that category, and that's okay. But just from a societal perspective, this is just going to drive that wealth gap even further. Because as the value of currency comes down, the value of most folks' savings is going to come down, and the real value of wages is going to come down. The thing that's going to go up is the value of real assets. If you're a real estate investor, those are going to go up. The value of your debts on those investments is going to go down. So rich people are just going to keep getting richer, and that's the problem with situations like this, is they drive a wedge and make those things go further. So unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. But for you, I want you to be on the right side of it, and I want you to be able to build wealth during these hard times. And let's face it, when banks are going to go out and lend money to people, are they going to lend it to people with no jobs and no assets? No, they're going to lend it to people like real estate investors who already have hard assets. They're going to lend them more money, and they're going to go out and make even more money. So I hope you found that hugely helpful. If you like this video, please like it, and please leave a comment below so I'll know to make more of this type of content. Please smash that subscribe button so you get updated every time there's a new video coming out, which I'll do one every week. And if you have any questions, if you want to talk about real estate, if you have different thoughts in the market, I would love to hear it. You can just shoot me an email, paul@paulhaley.ca. Talk soon. Let's start from the top. Is the Toronto real estate market going to crash? That's a great question. Unbelievable. What's happening right now? What could happen? And most importantly, what you can do about it, and what's really happening. What's really happening? Can I talk now? So inflation is going to go up, which means... Unbelievable. It's a problem with filming outside. Helicopters, hammering, people talking, boats. You name it, Jared.